During the 2019 World Tour, John Mayer performed what we have dubbed the Continuum Nights. These were two separate performances where he performed the Continuum album front to back for the second set of the evening. And at the Madison Square Garden performance of these Continuum Nights, John brought out a piece of gear that, to any fan of his gear, was an extremely cool moment to see. But first, let's go over a quick refresher on John's amp setup for the 2019 World Tour in order to get a better understanding of why this is so cool to see. Now, the amp setup was, generally speaking, a PRS JMod 100. You had a 2-rock John Mayer signature, as well as Dumble Steel String Singer 004 or 002. Both Dumble Steel String Singers that John owns were used during this tour. They were on PRS JMod cabinets and a 112 cabinet as well. Now, the JMod 100 was actually wired to the 112 cabinet, and then the John Mayer signature 2-rock was wired to the 212 that the JMod sat on, but just for the whole spacing and kind of aesthetic wise, that's how they were placed on the cabinets. However, during the Madison Square Garden performance of the Continuum Night, John elected not to bring out one of his Dumble Steel String Singers, but to use his original Steel String Singer. And we're talking about the 2-rock Sterling signature, the very original one. And yes, this amplifier is one of the 3 that was used on Where the Light Is and during the Continuum era. This is an amplifier that we haven't seen since the Continuum era being used. And the fact that John brought out one of the amps that was really a huge part of his sound during that era was just insanely cool to see. Now, for those of you who don't know, when I say the original Sterling signature model, this is the very first version of kind of that circuit that 2-rock ever produced. There were only 10 of them ever made, and of course John owns one. It's quite possible he owns more than one. And they all came in this beautiful black suede finish with the Vox kind of diamond grill cloth and on a blue plate instead of the silver or black kind of panel models you see from 2-rock. Now, these amps, of course, when they do come up on something like Reverb, for example, are just exorbitantly expensive. They're insanely expensive, of course, because there's only 10 of them ever produced. And again, John owns at least one, maybe 2 of them. But this is a different amp compared to the new silver Sterling signature that 2-rock currently makes. These are 2 different amplifiers we are talking about, but kind of based along the same Steel String Singer style of amplifier. I remember way back in 2019 when this concert was happening live, texting a group chat with a bunch of my friends being like, oh my god, this is so cool seeing the original Sterling signature being used by John for the Continuum Night, because this is one of the Continuum amplifiers. And 95-96% of the audience wouldn't notice or wouldn't care. But John made this deliberate choice to bring this amplifier out, and then for him and then us who follow his gear, it was just a really cool thing to see and kind of a cool nod to an era that's gone past, but all of us still have very fond memories of. Now, yes, playing devil's advocate here, because I know some of you are probably going to be commenting at this point, well, maybe his Dumble Steel String Singer just went down and he brought out this as a backup. And while that is possible, John doesn't use this 2-rock as a backup for his Steel String Singer. Now, we know during that tour he was actually touring with both Dumble Steel String Singer 002 and 004, so he easily could have just used a different one that night, and I really don't think it was a coincidence. This 2-rock hasn't been used, again, I've said it a few times now, in over a decade at that point, and so to see John using that amplifier was just really special because it's not one he brings around with him. It's, an amplifier that I'm sure a lot of us probably thought he had just sold, or it was just gone into the vault and never to be seen again, but the fact that he brought it out was just a really cool thing. The only weird thing is that during the Forum night, which was after the Madison Square Garden performance, he elected not to use it. So that was kind of a weird thing. It would have been really cool to see him use it, both times he did the Continuum set list front to back, but only the Madison Square Garden night was where you actually see this amplifier being brought out. So maybe he just decided, you know what, I do like that sound, but I'm gonna just stick with his original, kind of, or not original, but the original Dumble Steel String Singer sound for those performances, and just stick with that amplifier rather than use the 2-rock version, which was a cool thing for Madison Square Garden regardless. Before we end the video, I'll give a little bit of brief history on John and this 2-rock Sterling Signature amplifier. Now, during the trio era, for the very first few shows, John was using this amplifier, so we know he owned this amp at least since the start of the John Mayer trio era, going into, of course, Continuum. Now, he didn't obviously use this amplifier very long for the John Mayer trio, but he did bring it back for, of course, the Continuum tours, as well as Where the Light Is, obviously where this amp kind of has gotten some infamy from being one of the 3 that was used for that night. So the shots that you guys are seeing are really cool to see from Joshua Bryant, who took these during the 3rd ever John Mayer Trio performance, which is just wild to get such an early look at his gear. And I've done a video on this kind of gear and this night and this performance from these photos. If you guys haven't seen it, go check that video because it's really cool. But again, just really cool to see kind of an OG amp that John had, the OG, SSS style amplifier that John owned. It's really cool to see it being used again, and I just wanted to highlight this on the channel because I think it's a really cool moment that doesn't get enough appreciation from all of us fans of John's gear. So you guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts as to, what you think of John using this amplifier. Again, I mentioned it. I think it just was really cool, and I'm sure most of you guys do as well. And maybe some of you guys didn't notice this because it was just a one-night thing. But really cool to see nonetheless, and I'd love to see, your thoughts and comments down below. And until the next time, you guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Anyway, go ahead and click the subscribe button if you like what you see.